Hello friends, and welcome back to another episode of Love It or List It. Love It or List It is a video series on my channel where I try to use prompts or my friends picking my TBR so that I can read 3 books in this video. Of the 3 books, I determine whether or not I'm going to keep the books on my shelf or if I'm going to list them. In this video, I have another guest and I'm so excited to share this project with you. Hi friends, welcome to another episode of Love It or List It, but more importantly, a Love It or List It with a guest. Our guest this time around is Jan from Jan Agathon. I was just a guest on Do Your Worst, which is Jan's video series where she's reading her friends who have mainly opposite taste to her, their worst books to see if she can get a 5-star. And I decided that I was going to do a counterpart video to it, but I wanted to make it a Love It or List It. And if you haven't been around for a little while, I've been doing Love It or List It for the last 2 years. I've done it sporadically. I used to have a schedule for it. I really don't have a schedule for it anymore. But Love It or List It is just simply what I kind of talked about in the introduction, where I'm trying to read semi-backlist books. For the most part, they're all backlist books that I own in some capacity, whether it's physical, audio, on my Kindle, and I'm trying to figure out if I want to keep them or unhaul them. Love It or List It was bred out of another series that I did a few years ago called Read It Down, which I got extremely burnt out on, but that was my baby for a while. Basically, that one was where my friends picked my TBR for me, or picked from my physical TBR for me, and I had to read it in a month, and if I didn't, then I was on a book buying ban. I do miss that, and that's why I've decided with Love It or List It I wanted to add in guests here and there. If you're interested in Love It or List It or Read It Down, I will have the playlist linked down below. But I'm very excited about this episode because not only do we have a guest, we also are going to put a twist on this video because Jan is probably one of the most productive people that I know on this platform. Like, she is always getting her shit done. She'll get up at like 5 a.m. to read, to edit, to go to the gym. She is always on her productive shit, and I very much admire that because I'm a pretty productive person, but I'm not that level of productive, and I also find sleep to be very sacred. So I don't wake up super early on purpose. Anyway, I would never choose that life, but that life chose me. So I thought, what better way to put a twist on this video than forcing myself to get up at least at 6 a.m. every day to get in at least an hour of reading before I have to go to work or do whatever I have to do in my life. So we're gonna try to channel Jan in this video, which is gonna be so fun because Jan is hilarious. I really just love her vlogs. They're very comforting to me. You should check them out, by the way. If you don't watch Jan, like, check out her vlogs because they're very comforting. She's very funny. There's like cramming vlogs as well, which is another thing that makes me feel extremely productive, is watching her cramming vlogs, because not only is she getting up at like the ass crack of dawn, when the dawn's ass is cracked, as she would say, she's also like reading a ton. So if you want to feel inspired, watch her videos. So anyway, let's get to the TBR. Basically, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm refilming this introduction. You may have guessed that based on my hair being gone. Once I had hair, now I don't. So yeah, let me explain myself a little bit. Let's rewind to when I actually did an introduction for this. I did the introduction a while ago, weeks ago. I had intended to get this video up when Jan got her video up, but as I was filming one of the books that I picked at the very early stages of doing this video, I realized that all of the footage, like, it sucked. It didn't make sense. I hated editing it because I just wasn't coherent and I felt like I couldn't fix it. And I just don't want to see the footage and I don't want to deal with it. And I didn't even like the book that I was reading. Anyway, it was One Dark Window. If you were wondering, I gave it a big DNF. I didn't like it. So Jan, you were right about that one. But otherwise, I picked 3 other books. So I picked Woman Eating, which is a slice of life vampire novel. I also picked Belladonna, which is a YA gothic fantasy romance. And I picked Book of Night, which is an adult urban fantasy with shadow magic. And I'm really excited to share all my thoughts with these. I finished the video, so I know all my thoughts about them and I know which ones I'm keeping and unhauling, but you don't. So let's just jump into the very beginning of this video where I wake up at 5:30 or 6 a.m. for the first time. Good morning.
Jared is outside gardening, which I think is so funny. He actually is the one that's naturally up at like 5:30 a.m. every single morning and does his whole routine and feeds the cats and then goes out into the garden. I'm not. I like to sleep. So this morning was a little bit rough, and I had planned on talking to you in the morning, and then I just laid in bed until 8 and read. But I did stay up. I didn't fall back asleep. I did read. I read a little bit of Belladonna. It's kind of like no thoughts head empty right now, just because I'm still trying to process what's even happening in the story. I'm not sure if I'm vibing with the writing right now, but I think part of the reason is because I have been reading this urban fantasy for a while. I usually read it before bed, and it's a completely different writing style. Not that it's better, it's just different. And so I think it's just taking me a minute to get used to the writing style in Belladonna. I have a really busy day today. I kind of crammed in a little bit too much today, but it's fine. So today's a content heavy day, but I will try to read more of Belladonna later. For now, I'm gonna be making a matcha because I really need it. I'm about to watch the last 2 episodes of Queen Charlotte with my patrons, and I'm prepared to sob. I'm prepared to sob into my matcha. It's like 7 o'clock right now. I've been up for an hour. I've been reading Woman Eating. I hate updating in the morning, okay? I want to be one of those people who makes that, like, I get up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and read every morning and like vlog it. But every morning I get up and I'm like, I'm not talking to the camera. And it's not even about how I look. I come on here ugly as sin most days. The reality is I just don't have the capacity to talk anymore at 5 or 6 in the morning. I spent too many years of my life getting up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to go to work because I was a barista for like 8 years, and I just can't do it anymore. My body finally said, my body, my heart, and my soul finally said, enough is enough, Stephanie. So anyway, fortunately for us, this is technically a Love It or List It, with a little twist, which is me waking up at 6 a.m. to read and be productive, because that's what Jan does. And I definitely want to do that. Like, I want this in my life, theoretically. The truth of the matter is I don't get to work until 9 most days. Like 9 a.m. is my starting time. Some days it's 12 because I have a closing shift and I don't get off till 9 p.m. But yeah, I go in at 9 a.m. I don't really need to get up super early. So I normally am up at 7, which is a fairly reasonable time. I mean, my body kind of wakes me up at like 5 a.m., but I fall back asleep. I try to go back to sleep. Anyway, I did wake up at 6 and I started listening to Woman Eating, and I've made it to 42 pages. I'm like vibing with the audiobook more than the physical reading experience so far. I really like the audiobook narrator, and I feel like I'm in the story. It's very sad. It's a very sad story, and it's very slice of life so far. Our main character is a vampire, and she's sort of dealing through the human things that she's lost. She really starts to compare the human experience and her vampire experience, and like all of the things that she's lost and what she's grieving, and her experience with her mother. That's a aspect of this book so far. It's very melancholy. That's definitely the tone of this book, and I think that tone is going to continue throughout the narrative, especially considering the feelings she has surrounding being a vampire and surrounding food. So far, I think that this is going to be a book that I end up enjoying. I already have a pretty good feeling about it so far. I'm vibing with the narrative. I think this would be an easy book to give a low rating if you went in with the wrong expectations, which I feel I would have had I not seen reviews about this previously, because I did buy this when it released. It was like one of those books I was anticipating, and then I started seeing early reviews of it and realized that I needed to adjust my expectations about what this was going to be. I guess vampires to me always scream like urban fantasy. I usually assume that there's going to be an urban fantasy element to it, like a more fantastical element to it, and this is truly just a woman who happens to be a vampire living her life, kind of mourning and sort of reflecting on the things that she wishes that she could do. I actually feel like I could finish this today, but I have a few things that I need to get done, so I don't know if I will finish it, but I feel like I could finish it today. Again, I'm vibing with the audiobook, so I think I'm gonna listen to it in the times when I don't need to like use my brain. I did not read any more of Belladonna yesterday, which I really think this is such true Jan energy right now. I feel like the spirit of Jan has possessed my body because I am in the middle of many books right now. And specifically for this vlog, I am literally in the middle of 3 of the 4 that I chose. So the spirit of Jan has possessed me. What are we gonna do next? The potential to go to a coffee shop is high, okay? And I think we're doing that today because I'm not gonna lie to you, like I'm not a pumpkin spice girl. I'm not, I just don't like the flavor of it, and I don't drink coffee. So I think that if I drank coffee, pumpkin spice would be like a thing that I really enjoy. But you know what I do love, okay? I said earlier, wow, full circle moment. I said earlier I was a barista. So for many of those years I was a barista at Pete's Coffee because I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. And that's primarily where Pete's is. Like it started in Berkeley, so it's very, very popular in Northern California. So yeah, I worked at Pete's Coffee for like 4 years before I went into specialty coffee for many years. And the thing that I love from Pete's, and it's their pumpkin spice chai. But the thing is, I don't really frequent Pete's much anymore now that I live in Southern California. They're not that easy to find. There is one that's not that far from me, but it's like, it's me going out of my way to get something. Anyway, I'm going out of my way today to get a pumpkin spice chai. But the fact of the matter is, they've changed things so much at Pete's that I'm scared it's gonna be disgusting. But I'm gonna get it anyway. I think we're also gonna go to the bookstore to make the trip really worthwhile, so. And I'm still getting used to it. I'm like looking at it in the camera and I'm like, do I actually hate this decision? I don't. But you know when you first get your hair cut and you're like, I think I hate everything that I decided to do in this moment. I'm here because I did not get up at 6 a.m. Well, I kind of did. Like I got up because I was really anxious about going to the hairdresser because for whatever reason I get anxious about the weirdest things, and that's one of them. And I just wanted to like sleep in today, so I did. And I think I got up probably at 7:30, 8 o'clock. I did not read this morning, and I read a little bit at the hairdresser, but I've mainly read this evening, and I'm reading Woman Eating. I'm now halfway into the book. I said it earlier, this is very slice of life. Our character is going through a lot of different things at this moment in time. So she's a vampire, but her vampirism, it's not really explained exactly how one gets turned. We just know that her mother turned her as a baby, and her mother actually is very disgusted by being a vampire, which is a whole interesting thing that hopefully we'll find out about later in the book about like why her mom even turned her then. So her mom is very disgusted by the idea of being a vampire, and she even goes so far as saying like they only deserve pig's blood because it's dirty, it's unclean blood. So that's the only thing they like deserve
to feed off of. And that's a whole other aspect about the vampirism in here that I'm hoping maybe gets explained, but I just don't think it's going to, is the fact that like her mother was a vampire but had a human baby and then turned the baby. Do vampires just get pregnant by humans and then it's just a human baby, or did she like procreate with another vampire? I don't know, maybe we'll figure that out. And I think because of my fantasy brain and the fact that to me categorically I associate vampires with fantasy, and usually fantasy has like explanations about the magic system, the world building, like the creatures and how they exist and how they do what they do. And I just don't think we're gonna get that in here, because while we're getting bits and pieces about our main character and her mother, because she has a very interesting / strained relationship with her mother, I still don't think we're actually going to get an explanation on the vampirism in here, and I just need to let that go. But I just keep having so many questions about the vampirism and like the little bits and pieces that we get about her past and like her mother's past. But pushing that aside, I do actually really like the stream of consciousness that's happening here. Our main character at the beginning of the book is moving into this new apartment. She is starting this new internship. She's an artist, and her mother has just recently been put into a home because she has some sort of disease and she's deteriorating, and our main character like is no longer capable of taking care of her, doesn't really want to take care of her. So I think there's a lot of guilt with our main character, and that's why we do end up a lot of the time circling back to her mom and things that her mom told her or did. But at the same time, our main character is at this almost start of her life, even though it's not the start of her life, but it's like her restarting her life and reflecting on being immortal and having to constantly restart her life, and how she will never age, but also how she has this constant hunger, how she really, really wants to be able to eat food, like human food, but it's disgusting to her. She keeps trying, but at the same time, she starves herself because it's the only thing in this life that actually makes her feel alive and the closest that she could be to being human. And I think that's all very interesting. Like all of these discussions, all of these parts of her life that we're learning about, and the fact that it feels very stream of conscious. It's not necessarily completely a stream of consciousness type of narrative, but it definitely feels that way. And I think it makes it a little bit more raw. And I like the reflections that our character is having on immortality and humanity, and like what life has been like for her and what her life will continue to be moving forward, and how she can't really make connections with people, and how she has all of these plans of what her life is going to look like, and how she has to continuously start over. It's all very slice of life and just in her head, and I like it. I don't know that this is going to be anything that's like super profound for me, but I'm enjoying my experience with it, and it's nice to listen to. I really like this narration actually. So yeah, I'll probably end up finishing this tomorrow, and then I will focus on Belladonna and the Book of Night. I tried to do that. Okay. Hello. I can't lie to you. I like recently got my hair cut, and normally I go 6 to 7 days between like washing my hair. Yes, I shower between that time, but I like take 6 to 7 days to wash my hair because I have really thick hair. Anyway, I just got my hair done like 2 days ago. 2 days ago. Normally I would not wash my hair this soon after, but I'm so weird about me and straight hair, and I can't lie to you, the bob was giving bop, like I was the fourth Hanson brother while it was straight. I was not living, laughing, loving, and I'm still really getting used to it. I didn't think it would be that big of a deal because I used to cut my hair this short all through college. Like I was always chopping my hair off in college, but now I've had my hair long since like maybe 2018. I think 2018 was the last time I did like a really big chop, and I did did accidentally get my hair cut pretty short 2 years ago, and I was upset about it then as well. This though is the shortest I've gone, and I'm still really struggling with it. I didn't think that I would, but you know, here we are. But anyway, I have finished a book. I did get up this morning a little bit later than I have been, so I got up at like 6:30-ish, and I did read, and I finished a book, and I finished Woman Eating, and I don't have a rating. I don't know if I'm actually gonna rate this, but I definitely know that I liked it more than Jan. I can say that. I loved the ending of this book. I wish we would have gotten more of that, but I understood like the process of getting to the point of how it ended. But the ending was like the strongest part for me, and it made me almost automatically want to give it a 4 stars if I was going to rate it. But the more that I thought about it, I do have a few things that like would prevent me from really even wanting to rate it. I think that ultimately, while this is slice of life, I do think that there are specific conversations happening within this narrative that needed a little bit more nuance. And I think a big part of that was like a biracial identity, but also being vampire and human, and like that experience of knowing that at some point in life you were human and having that experience stripped away from you, and then what it's been like to live among humans and kind of want to live that human experience, seeing how you have to navigate your life so much differently than someone who's human, and the relationships that you feel you can't really have with people, because there is a sexual relationship that ends up unfolding in here, and it's very interesting how she kind of views this relationship and how it ultimately turns out. And she even says at one point, like, I don't normally become intimate with humans because I don't know what it could lead to. And I think that overall, the way the relationship plays out in general was such interesting commentary within the overarching narrative of this book. But I think my biggest issue is that this lacked a lot of nuance. I think by being so stream of conscious, we lost a lot of the conversation that could have been had by focusing on things that like in some regard didn't really matter. So I just don't really have a rating for this. I feel like it's a book that I'm going to think about a lot and I'm going to need to sit on, but I do know that immediately I was disappointed with the lack of nuance within specific conversations about our character and what she was going through and like her lived experiences. I also completely understand why Jan and others would not like this, especially if you're going into a vampire book. I said in the beginning, one of the things that I really struggle with vampires in general is this is in such a like contemporary setting, and we do get a lot of the answers that I was asking at the beginning. Like, there is no magic system here, right? We're just getting told something and that's just what it is. We're not getting the backstory, the lore, a breakdown of this world and magic system and like vampires. It's not like that. This also isn't a gothic tale. It's very contemporary. It's very modern. It's very literary. And I think that I have a hard time separating vampires from like fantasy and like gothic tales. So that's another reason I can see people really not enjoying this. But overall, if you like slice of life narratives especially, and you're a literary fiction type of person and you kind of shy away from anything that's like horror or gothic or even fantasy, I guess, urban fantasy, this is not that. You could forget this is a vampire book for the most part. So anyway, I did start the Book of Night, or Book of Night. I don't even think there's a "the" in there, but I started Book of Night, and it's so easy to read. I know that this clocks under 200 pages, I'm pretty sure, if not just like 200 pages. And this is Holly Black's adult fantasy debut. It's pretty much an urban fantasy. I'm gonna say right off the bat, I don't know why. I'm not even from Los Angeles. I do live in Los Angeles now, but I'm not even from Los Angeles. And I have always hated books set in Los Angeles. Typically, when I see that in a synopsis, like fame, Los Angeles, Hollywood starlet, singer, whatever it is, I'm never gonna pick it up. So I think that's why I kind of put this one off, because it is set in Los Angeles. And so I was like, I don't know about all that. But it doesn't, I mean, it hasn't really bothered me at all. I feel like Los Angeles is mentioned. It's obviously the backdrop. I say obviously, I don't actually think that it would be obvious had the author, character, etc. not like mentioned it a few times, but it hasn't really been bothering me, so that's great. It's very easy to read, easily digestible. The magic system though does not make sense, and neither does the world building. Okay, and this is so funny because having started Book of Night and having read and DNF'd One Dark Window, I learned something about Jan that maybe will be insightful for Jan. And I think it's interesting because maybe Jan and I align much more on fantasy than we even knew. The thing about One Dark Window and the thing about Book of Night that I'm going to talk about is that neither of the magic systems made sense. Neither of them make sense. I was either 20 to 30% from finishing One Dark Window. I was deep into it, okay? And One Dark Window is only a duology. So to me, the magic system has to be pretty well done pretty quickly. It has to be explained to you pretty well from the beginning, or it needs to be one of those books where the magic system is not like the crux of the novel. The thing is, in both of these books, the magic system is supposed to be really unique. We have a shadow magic that's happening in Book of Night, and in One Dark Window, we had like a tarot card magic. So I don't know if Book of Night is gonna be a duology, and maybe in the latter half of this book, we're gonna get more explanation. As it stands right now, I'm pretty far into this book for how short it is, and the magic system has not been well established or explained. The world building is there's something to be desired there. It's very easy to read though, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm like vibing on that regard because I'm like, ooh, this is easy to read, this is easy to get through. I'm vibing, it's no brain energy, love that. But what are we doing here? I felt the same way in One Dark Window, although that one was not easy to read. I didn't really like the writing, but magic system and world building didn't really make sense, and I wasn't vibing in that regard, especially because I think One Dark Window relies a lot more on the magic system. Like, I spoiled myself for the ending of One Dark Window, and based on where that story goes, the magic system is very important. Having been that far into the book and not really thinking the magic or the world building makes sense, that's a struggle. Anyway, it made me realize that Jan and I really align on the fact that world building and magic system has to be done well. Jan, I don't know if you realize this, but literally in both of these books, that is one of the big major things for me that felt very similar. Maybe we do align on fantasy, which is gonna be super interesting because I will be finishing up Belladonna. But yeah, so far with Book of Night, it's cheesy, it's very urban fantasy. I mean, I grew up reading urban fantasy. I actually really love urban fantasy. I love it for all its cheesiness, for everything that urban fantasy is. And I don't know, I just eat it up. So there's definitely like a level of cheesiness to this story because it's like that urban fantasy type of feel. I don't necessarily at this point in time see myself having any desire to move on with this series because while I'm enjoying the cheesiness of it, it's very quick to read. I don't really have any attachment to the characters at all. We've been introduced to like a million trillion characters. I don't really know if any of them are gonna matter in the long run. Our main character is fine. Like, I don't have strong opinions on her one way or the other. Something recently just happened in the story where I paused it where it was very like obvious that that was gonna happen. So yeah, I don't know, it's fine. Like, I don't think this will be any higher than a 3. So yeah, I have sprints later, so I'm hoping that I actually finish Book of Night during those sprints and like get a good way into Belladonna. But I will keep you updated on my final thoughts about the Book of Night. And yeah, hopefully, hopefully the second half picks up. It's 108 today, September 5th, 2024. It's 108 degrees. I had to go outside. Besties, that's not the move. Anyway, hi, hello. I had a bunch of errands to run today, so I didn't really update y'all about anything. I didn't update that I did get up at 5:30 this morning and I read some more Belladonna. I don't know, I got the audiobook on Spotify and I don't know if Spotify actually gives you a percentage of how far you're in. It does. I'm 13% in. I'm liking it. I'm actually really liking it. It's so atmospheric. I like the dynamic between the character and Death. It's great. But we do need to talk about Book of Night. House of Night finished me because I ended up DNFing it. I was 70% to the book and I realized that I just didn't really care about the characters. I didn't care about the world, the magic system. None of it was fully making sense to me. I kind of thought it was me, but then I realized after reading a bunch of reviews and watching some videos that it definitely was not me. I just didn't care enough to keep going with it. And shockingly, it's like a little under 300 pages. I think I misspoke earlier and said it wasn't even 200 pages. I meant to say that it was a little under 300 pages. So it's not that long. Holly Black doesn't tend to write long books, but somehow this felt like it went on forever. The audiobook isn't even that long. Page length not that long. The narrator was fine, but this just felt so long and tedious. But essentially we're following a main character named Charlie, and in this urban fantasy world set in Los Angeles, there's a shadow magic, and the shadow magic is related to the shadow that they cast. And so much is said about your shadow and like what you can do with your shadow or what your shadow looks like, and people can modify their shadows. And in some cases people don't have shadows. A lot of those instances are people losing their shadows, and some have sold them. These shadows are important. Do we know why? Not really. I know we start to find out towards the end of the book, but the main crux of the shadows in general is that our main character Charlie, she's kind of a con. She sees somebody's shadow like viciously ripped from them and the person is left for dead, and she sees this scenario happen and she can't stop thinking about it, so much so that she's kind of trying to investigate. On top of that, like I said, she's a con artist and she has gotten herself wrapped up in a few different things over the years. Mainly it's due to the different men that her mom has had in her life and exposed her to. These men have not been great, and so it's led Charlie down really rocky paths at times, and so some of her conning has now started to catch up to her, and that is kind of exactly what happens when we meet Charlie. She kind of gets caught up in a situation that she doesn't really mean to, but also she's very curious about the shadows being ripped from people so viciously, and it's kind of haunting her as well. There are some really interesting threads within this book that I think could be really well done had the magic system and the characters and stuff worked better for me. That being said though, I think there are some things in here that were extremely obvious. I knew a specific thing right from the jump, and really it was just because of how much time we spent kind of dwelling on this specific thing, and I was like, this in theory shouldn't really matter to the story. So the fact that we are thinking about it, talking about it, exploring it so much, like it's gonna become a thing and there's gonna be like a reveal about it. And I was absolutely right. This is an adult novel, so like there are more sex scenes or like alluding to sex scenes in here, but it does very much read younger. But anyway, I'm just not sure that Holly Black is the author for me anymore, because I've only had luck with one book. I've given one of the like, what is this, the 4th or 5th book that I've read by her. I've only given one of them 5 stars and the rest have been like 3 or lower. But moving on to positive things, Belladonna is going pretty well for me. So I did start at the beginning of this video and I decided to restart it because I had like read 2 books in between and I was like, whatever. I wasn't far enough into it to care if I restarted, and I'm having a good time. Okay, the atmosphere like immediately sucked me in. I'm so intrigued by our main character. I'm so intrigued by her relationship with death. I was playing one of my little phone games listening to this and I was like, I don't want to stop listening to this, and the only reason I stopped is because I fell asleep, and then I woke up this morning and I listened to more, so that's how I'm 13% in, and I'm having a very enjoyable time. I actually am excited to go back to it. I'm also excited because the 3rd book just came out. I don't know if it's the final book in the series, I'll have to research that, but I may just marathon this. I mean, I am speaking very soon, being only 13% in, but I am so optimistic because I love a good start to a book. Also, I'm definitely someone who vibes really hard with like YA whimsical fantasy, which is surprising to me that Stephanie Garber's like Caraval series didn't work for me, but I'm still holding out hope for the Once Upon a Broken Heart. I don't know what that series is actually called, but I think the first one was Once Upon a Broken Heart. I'm still really holding out for that one. I think that I could really like it, but I don't know. I'm just nervous because I didn't like Caraval. But anyway, Belladonna. Who would have thought? Actually, I did think because I bought it. So I was the one who thought that I would like it. Anyway, I'm gonna go eat lunch because I'm very hungry, and I'll talk to you when I have more updates. Hello, welcome to the really messy children's office. We've been going through like this whole thing of trying to organize it, but it's just
It's a lot. So please ignore that. Anyway, I wanted to insert this really horrible clip because I just need you to know that I've been really vibing with Belladonna, so much so that I hadn't wanted to stop reading to update you at the 50% mark like I intended to do. But tell me why. I was on my way to work today, okay? 88% into the book. And suddenly it stops. The audiobook stops while I'm driving. And I'm like, what's going on? Did I lose service or something? So I just like let it sit for a minute, sat there in silence. And I was like, okay, I don't normally lose service while I'm commuting to work. So let me just check this out whenever I'm stopped. Spotify said I ran out of hours. 3 chapters from finishing the book, I ran out of hours to listen. Spotify, if you're watching this, count your days.
Hello, it's me, and it's still hot as a motherfucker outside, but in good news, I did find the ebook for Belladonna, and I was able to finish it yesterday at work. Normally on Saturdays, I don't really update or vlog very much just because I don't have time. I go in pretty early, I have a commute, and then I'm like really busy all day at work. So I did not update in the morning, but I normally get up early on Saturdays anyway. So I did fulfill the challenge for the most part of getting up early for the entirety of this vlog that I was reading these books. So I know I didn't really give many updates about this because when I got into the book, when I finally like sat down and dedicated time to this book, I was in it. I really enjoyed this, okay? I wasn't expecting it because Erin recently read this and did not like it. Jan, she gave it a low 3 stars. I think she was expecting a little bit more because I don't know if one of the comp titles is like Addie LaRue, but I understand the comparison to Addie LaRue because Death is a character in here. It's a love interest. And so I think there were certain expectations in place for her according to her Goodreads review, which I completely understand. But for me, I had low expectations going into this and I was so pleasantly surprised. But this is absolutely in my wheelhouse of YA that I love and why I keep going back to YA, because there is just this like specific niche within YA that is a little bit horror-esque, a little bit gross, a little bit murder mystery, a little bit fantasy romance. I don't know how to explain it, but it definitely falls under like those types of categories. One of the other books that I kept thinking about when reading this, which is also a book series that isn't very popular, but I read the whole series and I just like, it has a very special place in my heart, is Stalking Jack the Ripper. That whole series, there's 4 books in that series. I didn't love all of them equally. The first 2 are by far the best, but I just had such a fun time with that series. And it's actually not that well loved or well received, I guess. I see very negative reviews or people talking about how it's really cheesy. I guess for me, similar to Belladonna, similar to things like House of Salt and Sorrow, those books, like I figured out the mystery pretty early on in the book, but that wasn't deterring me. Like something about the writing and the atmosphere in here is just 10 out of 10 for me. It was 10 out of 10. I absolutely felt that way about Stalking Jack the Ripper as well. So I realized that this is 100% my niche of YA fantasy, and it just always works super well for me. So I had a lot of fun with this. I immediately put the other 2 books on hold. So in Belladonna, we are following a main character named Signa, and we know that Signa has been orphaned. Her parents passed away at this ball in the opening scene of the book. And in that opening scene, we come to find out that Death is very drawn to Signa. As she gets older and a string of guardians have died around her, she has not been able to settle in one place for very long. And so in the beginning of this book, her most recent guardian passes away, and she is so close to the point in her life, which is 20 years old, where she will inherit her fortune and be able to just live her life on her own. But before then, she moves in with some distant cousins, and when she gets to Thorngrove Manor, which is where her cousins reside, she realizes very quickly that something is amiss, and she thinks that the family is being slowly poisoned, but she's unsure who it is and why this would be happening. So this is kind of like an amateur sleuthing type of book. There's this core mystery of like, why are people poisoning this family and what's going on that we do uncover. There's a resolution to it. But on top of that, there's this whole dynamic between Death and Signa, because Death can't seem to stay away from her, but also she can't seem seem to stay away from death, and they have like this tension between one another. There's definitely a romantic tension there as she's gotten older, and I was eating it up. I loved it so much. Honestly, I think the romance and the atmosphere of this book is probably my favorite part, because I will admit this didn't get a full 5 stars for me, even though I was having such a fun time, simply because I think the mystery was really easy to figure out for me personally, but also I think that the side characters weren't as well fleshed out as I would like them to be. Other than Death and Signa, I didn't really feel like the other characters who we were interacting with time and time again felt well enough fleshed out for me to like know who they were or to really like them. For one of the characters, Blythe, she's the one that's being poisoned and she's been really sick through the whole book. I kind of understand her not being super well fleshed out because she spent most of the book sick. But the other characters that she's interacting with like time and time again, I just felt like they were there. And really the focus is Death and Signa. And while I can sit here and complain about that, I really don't want to because I had such a fun time. This also ends on a cliffhanger. So it ends in the epilogue with the start of another mystery. So I'm really excited to see what ends up happening in the second book as well, because there's like another key player that has entered the chat. And I'm really looking forward to that dynamic and what's going to be happening between Death and Signa because of that dynamic. I'm really ready for it, okay? I really am. I really love Death and Signa's relationship, and I love like that dynamic. I loved the way that it all came together, and I was really nervous actually that the romance would not go the way that I was hoping it would, because that tends to be like the case, especially with YA romance, but I don't know, this did what I wanted, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, so we have come to the end of Loved or Listed Jan edition, and I think that this, for the most part, was fairly successful. The vlog itself was a struggle, which I explained at the beginning because I refilmed the introduction. But otherwise, I had a really fun time, and I'm just really excited to be a part of this series. I think that Do Your Worst is very, very fun. It's such a funny concept to me, and I knew going in reading somebody's worst books could backfire for me, but we had a 4-star, and I'm definitely going to be moving on with the series. I'm going to be keeping this. I will not be listing it. So this one is a success. We also read Woman Eating, and while I'm not rating this, I do think that I got a lot out of it. And for the most part, I really enjoyed the fact that it was like a slice of life type of vampire story rather than like a gothic vampire story. Really enjoyed that. I don't think I'm gonna be keeping this one though, because I don't foresee myself rereading it. So I think this one's gonna be a list. And then we have The Book of Night, which I DNF'd. So this one was not successful, and if I had to rate it, it would probably be like a 2.5 stars, but it's obviously on my Kindle, so I will be deleting it from my Kindle library, but that one was the least successful. And then I did say in the beginning that I had tried to read One Dark Window, and I also DNF'd that one. So I will be unhauling that as well because I did have a physical copy of it. But otherwise, we had a 2 and a 2, right? Where we had 2 fairly successful ones and 2 not so successful ones. Again, I want to give a big shout out to Jan and a big thank you for inviting me to be a part of this video series. I will have all of Jan's information down below, but also the video of her reading my worst books will be linked down below. Let me know down below if you have read any of these and how you felt about them. Otherwise, if you've made it this far and you just want to say hi, feel free to leave a vampire emoji down below, and I will talk to y'all next time. Bye, friends.